We're going to take this opportunity now to wrap up what has been a huge 2020 NAB AFL draft. Of course, Jamara Ugle-Hagan, this year's #1 draft pick. Riley Thilthorpe taken at pick 2 to Adelaide. Will Phillips was probably the surprise packet of the draft early days when he was called out by North Melbourne, Cal.
Yeah, he was. We obviously thought that Riley Thilthorpe would be the Crows' man with their top choice. They ended up choosing him ahead of Logan McDonald. But Will Phillips came from the clouds a little bit, if you can come from the clouds from number 5 and number 6, but he did that. Edged out his former schoolmate in Elijah Hollands to be that guy for the North Melbourne Footy Club, and it already had a home visit from Boomer Harvey, so already embedded into the North Melbourne Footy Club. The Swans went back-to-back. Logan McDonald then matched a bid for Braden Campbell. Denver Granger Barras got through to the Hawks. That's a great one for them. Elijah Hollands, as we said, the last member of the Fantastic Five, gets through to the Suns. Then the Bombers started, and it was a really good haul for them. Nick Cox and Zach Reid filled both ends of the ground, potentially as key forward and key back. Cox can also play as a key back, so genuine versatility there. And Archie Perkins, the buzz, the X factor, what he can't do on the field, there's not much. So it's a really strong top 10. And then after that, we started to hit a few little surprises after that, Riley. Luke Pedlar came into the mix for the Crows. Tanner Bruin slid a little bit further, but the Giants snapped him up as part of their mix. He was one of 4 picks that they took early on. We know they obviously ended up with Connor Stone and Ryan Agwin as well. Having missed out on a couple of tools at the top end, so they rejigged their mix and ended up with some really quality players there and some interesting players too. Midfielder in Bruin, Stone a versatile hybrid type, and Angwin a running midfielder as well. And the Pies, they were in everything, in absolutely everything.
Trades, bids.
I'm sure they're still making calls. Ollie Henry was their first pick by the time they started. Then Finlay McRae slipped through to the point where they were happy to grab him. And Reef McInnes, they matched a bid for him. And that was a really good one for the Pies to get him with their 3rd pick after some conjecture around the possibility for him to be bid inside the top 10. So in the end, the first round went for 26 picks, which is a fair chunk of this year's draft, and it just looks like being a really interesting group to look back on next year, because Braden Cook slipped out of it. We thought Jack Carroll might be a part of it. There was a few more bids than we thought. Blake Coleman ended up being in amongst it for the Lions. So, yeah, it was full of surprises. The level of names wasn't too different to what we thought it might be. Max Holmes is a player who there'll be all eyes on throughout this year. Geelong made the big deal. That's the Stocker deal, isn't it, really, of this year.
Trading with Richmond for pick 20, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So they traded next year's first round pick to get into this year and grab Max Holmes, who's been the genuine bolter of this year's group of the NAB AFL draft. So a really strong top end, a couple of surprises, which we love. That's what we're here for, and a couple of ones that went to plan. But yeah, a really interesting night to see it all unfold.
And just quickly, a big winner from both of you. Who should be most pleased with their draft night?
I'm sticking with Collingwood. So they go out, they get Ollie Henry with their first pick, dynamic forward who can play for them probably next year. Finlay McRae, Reef McInnes and Caleb Poulter with their next 3 picks. Really like that. 3 midfielders that add a different dimension to a midfield group which is really decimated throughout the recent trade period. They lose Tom Phillips, Adam Treloar and Jaden Stevenson. So they get those 3 on ballers, which I really enjoyed. And they took a bit of a flyer on Lee McMahon. I like Liam McMahon as a developing forward prospect. Maybe he's the next marking target in that forward line, which is they've needed for a long time. They've trialled Will Kelly and Trey Rusco through there this year. Maybe Liam McMahon's the one they can give a shot to next, and maybe it'll work out for them. So from where the Pies started with 14 and 16, I like what they've ended up with.
Cal?
I like the Crows haul. They obviously took Thilthorpe early, and that was the big call they had to make. But then they ended up with Luke Pedlar next, Braden Cook as well, and Sam Berry. So they stocked up at the top end and picked up some players who will add to their mix immediately. And I think the Bombers are pretty hard to pass up. With 3 top 10 picks, they had to nail them, and I think they've made the right choices with their selections. So well done there. And out of their 5 picks, 4 are tall key position players. And as we mentioned before, Perkins brings something a little bit different to their list. So I like what they've done.